There's no shortage of tips, tricks, and hacks on how to be more thrifty and save money. But as you're taking in all of this information, it is so important not to forget the frugal ways and wisdom of the older generation. Our grandparents knew how to stretch a dollar, and their strategies are still relevant today. And the first tip that we can take from the older generation is learning how to make do. And if you don't know what this means, making do is the concept of making the most out of what you already have, even if it's not perfect or if it's not exactly what you want, which is basically the opposite of always seeking new things. Some of our grandparents had to make do because they often had limited resources and fewer choices compared to what we have today, meaning they had to make the best of what they had. Now, this doesn't mean you can never or should never upgrade your life or your possessions. However, making do can give you perspective and help you distinguish between needs and wants, which in turn helps you keep material things in their proper place. This encourages you to think about what you truly need for your well-being and what you can do without, which of course saves money. Another lesson we can take from the older generation is not to waste food. According to a recent study, younger generations today waste more food than any other generation, which honestly, I'm not surprised, and I've definitely been guilty of this. And the reasons vary from overbuying to being too busy to cook to not eating leftovers. And this is something that's completely different from the older generations because they were more mindful when it came to food, especially during periods of hardship. So if you want to take a lesson from your grandparents or your great-grandparents, make it a point to reduce or completely eliminate food waste. And a few practical tips include creating a weekly meal plan and shopping list and only buying what you need. Also, make a habit of eating leftovers for lunch or dinner to ensure all cooked food is consumed. You should also store food in airtight containers to keep it fresh for longer and prevent spoilage. Lastly, freeze extra portions or ingredients for future meals, which prevents them from going bad. Another thing that can help is realizing that your kids don't need as many toys as you might think. Some people might not agree, but it seems as if kids today have so much stuff. If you watch decluttering videos, organizing videos, or Christmas morning reveals, you might be blown away by how many toys people buy for their kids. And you might even wonder if they actually play with it all. But if you look in the past, you'll see that a lot of members of the older generation took a different approach with their kids, and they didn't overload them with a lot of stuff. And obviously for some families, this was due to financial constraints and they couldn't afford to buy a lot of items. So yes, it was a different time. But even with all of those variables, I do feel that there used to be more value in simplicity. Recently, I deep dived into why some parents go overboard nowadays, even when they can't really afford to. And according to some of the reasons, some parents might do this if they grew up without a lot and they feel the need to overcompensate with their kids. There's also social expectations and peer pressure, as well as heavier marketing. And of course, there's nothing wrong with buying your kids new toys, but it is important to find a balance that fits your family's goals and values. Our grandparents also saved money by watching less TV. Now, to be fair, depending on how old you are, there were far fewer stations at the time, but that doesn't change the fact that watching less TV is a cost-effective approach that could benefit your bottom line. Think about it. When you watch less TV, you might realize that you don't need as many options, in which case you could cancel or downgrade your cable and get rid of a few streaming services, and you might even buy fewer TVs for your house. You'll also have less exposure to ads, which could mean fewer unplanned purchases, and you might even reduce your energy consumption, which can save you money each month. Along those lines, our grandparents also knew that they didn't have to spend money to have fun, and I honestly believe that some people nowadays don't get this. Our grandparents had a knack for finding low cost or free entertainment because oftentimes there were no other options. They played card games like bridge, they had book clubs, plus many of our grandparents had hobbies like knitting, sewing, or gardening. In addition, spending time outdoors was a common form of recreation, so they enjoyed picnics, walks in the park, or simply relaxing in fresh air. And their approach to leisure wasn't only budget friendly, it also created a lot of lasting memories and it helped to strengthen their social bonds. You can also maximize household items by cutting them in half to be more thrifty and resourceful. And this strategy involves extending the life of commonly used items so you can use them twice as long and reduce the frequency of these purchases. For example, you can do this with sponges. A full sponge can wear out quickly, but if you slice it in half, you can make each one last longer. It's a similar thing with dryer sheets. A single dryer sheet might be too large for the average load of laundry, Yet, cutting it in half might provide the same benefits, with each half serving 2 loads. In addition, you can also brew your own. And no, I'm not talking about coffee, even though yes, you can brew your own. In this tip, I'm more specifically talking about iced tea. And this tip might only resonate with people who live in a certain area, but growing up, a pitcher of iced tea was a staple in my house and in my grandparents' house. You put a few tea bags in a pitcher of hot water, you would let it sit, then you would add sugar and more water. It was a whole process, but it was good. But as we know, it is more convenient to go to the grocery store and buy a gallon of iced tea instead of making your own. But that convenience comes with a price. Even if you buy a generic brand of iced tea, you might pay close to $3 for 1 gallon. But for about $1.50 more, you can get 22 tea bags. And according to Lipton's website, it only takes 1 black iced tea bag to make a gallon of tea. So that's a huge savings. Another lesson we can take from our grandparents is realizing that we might not need as much space as we think. In 1970, the average square footage of a new house was around 1,500 square feet, and today it's over 2,500. Yet the average size of an American family has not increased over the past 50 years, it's actually decreased. Even so, homes are getting bigger and bigger, and of course, bigger homes come with bigger expenses. They often have bigger price tags, higher utility costs, and more maintenance. And if too much of your money goes to the upkeep of your home, that can prevent saving and hitting other financial goals. And I think that some people feel that they need more space than they actually do because they're still holding on to that belief that bigger is better. And you also have some people who are still measuring success by the size of their house. There have been so many times when I'm watching House Hunters or similar shows, and you'll see a family of maybe 3 or 4 who already live in a nice sizable home, say 2,700 square feet. But now they're on the show looking to upgrade to something that's like 4,000 square feet. And the reason is always the same, and they usually say it's because they need more space. And when you take a tour of their older home, yeah, you can see why they would think that they need more space, because every inch of the house is packed with stuff. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you already have a big house. Instead of jumping into something even bigger, which is going to cost more and you have to spend more time cleaning it, why don't you just clear out some of the stuff that you have and create the space that you need? Because at the end of the day, 3 or 4 people should be able to live in 2,700 square feet and be comfortable. Now, obviously, I can't speak for everyone, but I grew up in a house of similar size from age 11 to 23, and there was 4 of us, and there was plenty of room. My point is, our grandparents or great-grandparents often had smaller homes with far more children than some have today, and they made it work.